Welcome to Pathways to Industry, the IEEE EDICAPA News premier conference, talking about the transitions from that students make to industry and helping young people as they grow in their careers. I'm the director of EDICAPA New. My name is Nancy Ostin, and I'm really delighted to be welcoming you today and to our keynote. I'm here to introduce our keynote. With us today, we have Dr. Patrick Nunally. Patrick is an amazing interesting person. He's at EDICAPA New. He's going to tell you all about that. Went to Cal Poly, won our Outstanding Young Lecturer of the Year award, but has done so much more. Father of the Arbitron and Nielsen rating system. So we'll get to that. And I'm going to introduce Dr. Karen Panetta. Dr. Panetta is a former member of the IEEE Board of Governors. She's currently the director of our development group, but she was the 2019 president of IEEE EDICAPA New, and a dear friend and a great person. I'm really pleased to introduce to you Karen Panetta.
Thank you, Nancy, and welcome everybody. I have the distinct pleasure of interviewing and talking today to Dr. Patrick Nunally. So Dr. Nunally is really not just an EDICAPA New member, but he is our super fan, which is going to help us talk to you about all the different career pathways that are expected, unexpected, and how to prepare yourself. But he's also got some great insights on other things that you can get out of IEEE-HKN. So I'd like to introduce Patrick Nunally right now.
Hi there.
Welcome, Patrick. Welcome.
How are you?
Good. So Patrick, the first thing is just tell our audience a little bit about yourself, so that, describe yourself and just why you love HKN.
Well, EDICAPA New basically came into my life. I was working full-time, going to school full-time, and frankly, EDICAPA New kind of came into my life. And initially it seemed like, another thing, but it really turned out to be kind of a pivotal point for me. Within that organization, I met a small group of people that had my same values, my same structure, and we basically formed kind of a little organization on our own, and we've stayed in touch monthly for now. I don't want to think how many years. Going on 40.
But you've established lifelong connections. So
absolutely.
So a lot of folks think about HKN as, okay, I did it as a student, I'm done. I put it on my resume and I'm done. But you're really, the epitome of what HKN can be if you stay engaged long after you graduate. So can you tell us a little bit about, now you mentioned that you were working full time as a student. I mean, you had a job, but you also had a family, right? At the same time, did you say that?
Yeah, I had 2 children at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, most students today, I was going to say, I went to school part-time, full-time while I worked, part-time jobs when I was in school. And most students today don't have the luxury of just being able to focus on school 100%. So it's even more enriching that we really embrace folks that try to do lots of different things, and regardless of their socioeconomic background, regardless of where they come from. Can you talk a little bit about your career, in the sense you've done amazing things, but you trained to be one thing? Did that lead to what you ended up doing?
No, it was the strangest thing. I started out really focused on, I focused heavily on semiconductor physics, and I was absolutely adamant about, chip design at the time, VLSI, and had begun in that area, but found a love for signal processing, and that became kind of my, reason for everything, and became the head of signal processing for General Dynamics Corporation at a fairly young age. Founded their cognitive systems lab, and they were the ones who actually financed my first company and allowed me to go into the commercial arena. And once I'd had that bug, frankly, from there, I just started, always founding new companies based on my technology. And one of them was the company that developed the core technology for Arbitron's rating system. And frankly, it's just been a continual journey, always learning something new, always kind of looking at that next horizon and not really feeling bound by, I'm supposed to do this or I'm trained to do that. And
It's interesting,
always,
yeah.
you
It's
know,
it's interesting too. So you went, did you even have a clue that you wanted to be an entrepreneur when you started all this?
not even, no, no, no. I really set out. Well, I think I mentioned at one point when I was very young, I decided that I wanted to be an engineer. Um, and it was from watching the moon landing. At that point, I saw all of the fellows in the white shirts in mission control, and all the other kids, the astronauts were heroes, and obviously they were. But I was fixated on the guys in the white shirts because they were the ones who knew how to put people on the moon, and they could do that again and again and again. And I
And you
wanted to be
and
that.
you weren't pushed away by the pocket protectors, huh?
No, no, I believe me, I was the only 7-year-old in a white shirt and a thin black tie.
Well, that's the thing. We also want folks to understand that you marched to your own beat. You
Mhm.
weren't afraid to do what you wanted to do and to pursue different avenues. But a lot of our students watching today, especially young folks, they look at an engineer and they say, that can't be me. Oh, he probably, everything, he went to a company, was successful, success, success, success. And you never had failure, but we try to teach that no, engineering is all about failure. Can you talk about something that didn't go right?
Believe me, failure is part of this process. Now that I have had, I've had fantastic success and dramatic failure, and it, literally, it's a process of just growing, developing, and again through my association with Etta Kappa Nu and my friends within that, really it was the opportunity to shape each other, to hold each other accountable for our goals and our dreams, basically setting out kind of, what we intended to do and not letting each other forget that, not letting each other forget who we were and
Mhm,
what we set out to do, and not, when things got tough, not to just give in.
mhm,
It was always kind of a safe space for feedback and for, encouragement, people pitching in to help each other. And
mhm.
again, I know it's an unusual kind of thing, but I really encourage everyone to look at your look at the members within your chapter and find those people that you can really connect with, because they can they can basically be lifelong resources for you. I mean, in my case, they certainly were.
Mhm.
I have 6 fellows other than myself that, again, we've helped each other start companies, develop technologies, file patents, and then all the bad things to divorce and death, and but we've always been there
Things
together.
people don't talk about, right? We're not supposed to talk about all the bad things that happen along, but life happens, and
Life happens.
life happens. But you mentioned something about accountability. So, when you said talking about the dreams and goals, a lot of times when I ask somebody, what's the dream, they look like they're embarrassed to say it out loud. You created a community where your colleagues could say, I want to do this. I want to, do these, might have been crazy ideas, but you actually help them nurture that and feel those ideas out to fruition, right? Isn't that something real?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that, when, and again, different ones of us had different goals, but in the end, I think that we've all really hit our goals. I mean, mine was I wanted to specifically change some part of the world. I wanted to do something that hadn't been done, and the opportunity presented itself in the rating systems. That there was a desperate need to revamp the entire infrastructure, and so I ended up, being loved and hated by many in the radio industry. But again, I built a system that told the truth, and
Mhm,
that ultimately was changed everything.
mhm.
But through the course of that, there was lots of times where it was just like, guys, it's I'm really hurting here. It's not it's not going good. The technology seems to work, but it's a little iffy. And again, they they challenged me to not give up on myself and give up on my dreams. And frankly, wouldn't have been where I am without them.
That's amazing. And I just, it's interesting that everybody, when you're on top, everybody wants to be your friend. But when you're down and out, that's when you find out who your real, true colleagues and friends are, the ones that stand by you and encourage you to keep going on. And I think that's what you're saying Eta Kappa Nu was for you.
But it is only because Eta Kappa Nu basically, almost by definition, you have folks that have shared interests, and they're kind of at the same level of growth that you're in. And again, different people will grow at different rates. But when you actually kind of all begin together and kind of start out, and again, you'll all go off and do different things. You'll have different interests. You'll be working for different companies. But when you come back together, you'll find that kind of the core elements of the growth are still in lockstep. And to be able to speak at a higher level of kind of expertise in kind of your particular area, you actually have now a group of people that, understand. They're kind of like a set of equal mentors that are your equivalents as opposed to, your guides. I can't say enough about it. Really, I really encourage everyone to make the most of it.
Most of it. But let's talk about the mentality sometimes in school today, like in engineering, we talk about, well, we want you to collaborate, but then our infrastructure is, no, do your own work and competition and things like that. And you didn't have that. You really fostered an environment that it was like, we want each other to do the best we can. And we're not, just because you do lousy doesn't mean I look better. That's really important. That's a huge part of really developing and nurturing great relationships.
It is. Had we actually gone and done, let's put it this way, had we all gone and done the same thing, we're competitive folks. We would have gotten at each other. I know that, but in a good way. But the reality is we all went and did very, very different things. Wildly different things. But we all understood kind of the same issues, the same core issues in development and where everyone was heading, what they were doing, and could help each other kind of with new ideas, thoughts from our own areas of expertise that, perhaps they hadn't thought of. We're constantly reading and challenging each other to keep up on the technology. And did you read this paper? And what about this? And in doing that, again, it wasn't competitive at all. It was nurturing in a way that, really profound. And again, I think that that's something that really gets missed and something that ultimately I'd like to see Eta Kappa Nu really embrace is that, the Eta Kappa Nu members, when they matriculate and move on, it's not just, a nice thing to wear at graduation or something to have been part of. It is, I think, an opportunity for life to be part of a community that, frankly, they are your equals. They can keep up with you and they can make you better. And if you let them, they can be your best friends.
Right. And, we always induct people on scholarship, attitude, and character, and that character builds as we go along. But I want to zoom in on the technology piece that you talked about, because you said you wanted something that told the truth. And so you had a goal.
Right.
Now let's talk about, taking it from the dream to, like, did you have all the answers in the technology? How did you get by it? You talked about love-hate relationships.
We had nothing at the time. The way radio readings were done in the US was by journals, basically people writing down what they listened to. The challenge was to find a way to use a little bit of signal processing and just a little bit of hardware to build what amounted to be a pager that would be capable of recognizing radio stations and recognizing listenership, and whether it was audible and traceable and trackable. and to provide attribution to it. And remember, this was back in the early 90s. So we didn't have a lot of the resources we have today. You know, processors were nothing like they were, they are today. So it was a challenge. It was a real challenge. Making it work was a beast, but in the end, it worked out really well. And it became the mainstay, and ultimately that is how things are done in the world. And it's been 30 plus years, and it's still how we do it. And so it was a heavy lift. It was really hard. And again, I went back to my Etta Kapanu, group time and time again, saying I can't do it. I tried it. Just there's the signal to noise ratio is just not there. I can't get the, at the time, primitive AI to work. It wasn't working, and they weren't going to let me give up, and they didn't, and it worked, and it was great.
Now, you mentioned AI. So let's talk about what AI looked like in the 90s. So now we could say that you're like a pioneer of AI.
Yeah, I started with, in fact, my first patents in the AI area were from the 80s. So I'm really dating myself. I had the luxury of working for defense contractors, and at the time, they had a fair amount of signal processing needs to find bad guys and make missiles that could hunt. And so it was the opportunity at the time to really embrace neural networks and artificial intelligence. But again, computationally, we weren't where we are today. We just didn't have a lot of horsepower. And so the reason I mentioned earlier that semiconductors, silicon, was where I began. That's how I started. Was we were building custom silicon to build neural networks. And that basically bridged the gap. I became fascinated with neural networks, AI, and machine learning. That, of course, took me into signal processing, and that was kind of that transition. But yeah, we actually built some amazing things.
You connected the pieces of signal processing to AI. So to you, it was like, I found a new tool to be able to overcome the computational, or to get the information.
You call it a tool. I call it a toy. It was fun. I mean,
that's true. I do call it I would like it to be a toy in my world, but right now.
No, I work with AI every day now, and I just am thrilled. Frankly, I'm thrilled that it has come as far as it has, as fast as it has. Back in the 80s, it really lost favor for a while. Because there wasn't enough horsepower to do it. The ideas were good, and of course, I mean, I won't list all the.
I do remember them, pitching self-driving vehicles and all this, futuristic stuff, and everyone's like, "Yeah, right, that's never going to happen."
Yeah.
And here we are today that we have it.
Well,
We just
I'm thrilled to at least be here today to actually see some of the things being done in the generative area, and I have to admit, I think it's still just a few years away from some truly amazing things. So,
well, I'm pretty amazed with what we've done in the health sciences and things like that. But I want to know, you also talked a lot. I'm one of these people that I know a lot of technology, but security drives me insane. I don't want to have to put in 50,000 passwords because I don't remember them. And then I'm one of those people that, I can't remember the password manager. You grasped onto this early on, and you came up with some great things for security. Can you talk about why you came up with that and what your philosophy was on it?
Yeah, no, actually, I've done a fair amount in security. Security is a strange thing. I mean, everyone wants it, everyone demands it, but no one really wants to pay for it, and it better not cause them any trouble. If it causes them any trouble, they don't want it. And in fact, people will actively defeat security if it causes them a bit of a pain. So you ask people to, okay, we're going to set a password. Of course, they'll use the word password. Say, no, it's got to be more complex. So it becomes password 1. Well, that's not the idea. And so what it came down to is we needed a way to transparently enforce security. And what I developed was, and actually have, I don't know, about 14 patents in, but a way of actually using the sensors on cell phones to fuse the data using AI at the edge to build patterns of how people act, and using that patterning to actually understand whether or not the person holding the phone is the person that I recognize. And I don't necessarily need to know who they are. I just need them to be consistently acting as they do. So their walking gait, their voice, and in doing it, have it down to a point where it actually works very well. But that, I think, is kind of the key to security in general. It needs to be transparent, pervasive, and just completely native. And that, I think, is going to be the future that we're going to see in security in general, is moving away from things like the two-factor authentication, which, is good, but still breakable.
A nuisance.
And moving more towards kind of a post-quantum kind of encryption.
And did you, so now we're talking about security in AI, but what are some of the things we have to worry about with, AI and security right now? Like, I see a lot of stuff going on about, it's, people selling products that, it's 99% accurate. And as somebody in AI, that I cringe when I hear that, because it's like, you're really not asking the right questions. Can you talk a little about that?
Well, explain exactly what you mean, though.
Well, like, so security in AI, like, when somebody's AI is going to replace people in decision making, and we don't, it's more accurate than the human.
Yeah. Well,
Those kind of broad statements.
AI represents a tool. Ultimately,
not a toy. Now it's not a toy.
Well, it's a toy too. The thing is that AI is going to, it is going to change a lot of things, and it stands, though, to revolutionize kind of how we interact with the world. I see AI as kind of the ultimate user interface, rather than, there are some tasks that it'll automate. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, I see it as freeing people up to do the things that AI can't do, and to really, frankly, leave us with a more creative, dare I say, spiritual kind of world, where people can spend a lot less time in the drudgery and a lot more time in, frankly, a happier place, a happier life. So I don't know. I'm very optimistic about it. I mean, yes, there's always the fear that it'll do terrible things, but I think we're very sensitive to it. I mean, we're not going to let
awareness. So in other words, the awareness of being aware is going to help us, counter any of those negative types.
Well, there's the Ada Lovelace Institute and a number of others where they're driving forward already with the ideas of AI ethics and just being aware. And ultimately, we don't want to let AI learn from the worst of our people and principles and ideas. It stands to perhaps be the best of all of us if we basically are cautious and realize that it is learning from us. And it's kind of like having children, right? Suddenly they're going to pick up on all your bad habits. So
it destroy your house and cost you a lot of money.
You've clearly been there. Yes. But ultimately, yeah, you just ultimately we just need to be careful. I
But
mean,
that's, yeah, I was going to, sorry to interrupt you, but before it falls out of my head, you just mentioned about, like children. Does that mean that education for how we educate students in the future is got to change?
oh, absolutely. No, in fact, education, I think, is ripe for a massive amount of change. And I think that what I'm what I really believe is that as we go forward, the opportunity to educate everyone,
Hmm.
um, not everyone has to get a PhD in electrical engineering or any of that business, but the opportunity to give everyone the opportunity to understand and reach out and be creative and to develop, whether they're wherever they are, wherever they come from. I think that now we've actually got that opportunity. And I don't think that opportunity has ever existed
No,
before,
not
only
available to
because,
everybody, and not available to everybody, regardless of where you come from. Yes, and what
right.
power, computing you have.
And I think now with AI tailoring education
Hmm.
so that we basically are stretching people, pushing them to, their maximum learning rate rather than a regimented
Hmm.
class where you end up with, some students that are way ahead that are dragged back and some that just aren't getting it yet and can't keep up. Now, basically, there's the opportunity to push everyone to their, as best as they can be and learn at their own rates. I frankly see everything changing as far as education.
Right. And some of our Eta Kappa Nu students and professors are actually using it to help autistic children learn better,
Hmm.
more, more conducive to their condition.
Right.
And along the way, we're learning more about the affliction and ailments so that we don't expect every child to assimilate to, like you
Hmm.
said, the recipe of here's how you learn, here's a regiment. And I think that that is a great growth opportunity. That's that, so I'm looking forward to that as well. And, the other thing that you keep bringing up is spirituality, community. You really are embodying what I would say people think that engineers wear pizza eating, closet, basement creatures, sitting at computers, 9 to 5. And you're bringing in all this creativity and imagination and opportunity. And it's like, Patrick, what are you doing? You're ruining the stereotype. Tell us
But
more about why that's important.
right, creativity is the heart of what we do. I mean, when people graduate, um, we end up with all, ton of knowledge with regard to how circuits work and structures and how to, but then you're faced with that issue in your first job. You sit down with that blank page and you have a problem and you need to go solve it. Well, now you've got all these tools. You've got a great toolkit, but now what do? You have to have creativity. You have to basically, it's almost having gone to school to learn the mechanics of painting, but you still have to have the idea. And so the root of what we do, if we're doing it well, is creativity and being um, a visionary, recognizing a problem and having the grit to sit down and say, look, I'm going to solve that problem.
Mhm.
Um, and it sometimes goes well and sometimes it doesn't. But I think that part of the engineering curriculum should be specifically training in creativity because that's something that I don't think people, I think, believe that creativity sometimes is, just you get an idea out of the blue, and that's not true.
That's
You
right.
sit down and work at it. It is a process,
Mhm.
and if you know the process, it's ultimately fantastic. And again, I've got 120 something patents, and again, it's because I work at it.
Mhm. Wow. Wow. That's really impressive. I also, the other thing is patenting and entrepreneurship. What advice would you have for somebody who says, I do want to get a patent. I have ideas that I want to start a company. Where should I start? What should I do? Because a lot of folks back then used to have companies, big companies, and then they would do spin-offs. But that doesn't seem to be the model today. Can you talk a little bit about what some advice that you have for new young entrepreneurs?
Yeah, no, for new entrepreneurs, basically the idea, I think the core element is defining upfront what it is that ultimately your process and problem is going to solve, and then building a team, a set of relations around you to then support that idea. If you can do that, if you've got kind of the core idea, the technology, and a good stab at how you're going to solve the issue, and you've associated with folks that augment that idea. And again, you need to dig around and find them. But once you have that, at that point, getting funding for your idea, it's not that hard. I think that sometimes people think that the good idea alone is what people should be putting money in. But you have to realize that for entrepreneurs, people are investing in the people and whether they believe that those people can carry that dream to market or not. And what it comes down to is, do they have the smarts? And frankly, everyone here has the smarts. Then do they have the grit? Are they going to stick with it, even when it gets tough, when things aren't working? If they've got those things, that basically causes people to say, okay, I'll put some money in this and we'll make it work.
That's so refreshing to hear. That's so refreshing to hear, because I've, some of the trainings and things that we do, what we learn is, oh, you got to do, VC dating or whatever, or find yourself a CEO and get somebody else in there. And a lot of the folks that I meet, young people, they want to do this. They don't want to just hand it off to somebody just to make a quick buck, sell out, and move on. They really want to see it, make a change and make an impact.
Well, that's the thing. You have to basically, frankly, it has to be yours. You have to carry it. And handing it off to someone else, again, if it's something that you can't do, then fine. But the reality is you can do it. It's simply a matter of learning and associating with the right folks. And again, there are people that can help you. Again, I help young entrepreneurs all the time. Again, they just ask, can I help? And there are a bunch of us that'll do that. So, and again, I would encourage within IEEE-HKN people to recognize those that have been entrepreneurial successes. Frankly, every one of the IEEE-HKN that have my color hair, I have found are absolutely thrilled to help. They just don't have that connection with folks now. And so I think that's a set of resources that going forward, I'd really like to see built, only because I think that we can do a lot.
And I think that that's something, one of the takeaways that we here at HKN and the leadership believe that that's something we need to do, is create these mentor circles. Mentorship is so critical. You learn from experience, but here you are, with your cohort of Eta Kappa Nu, entrepreneurs, successful people saying, here we are, ready to mentor. And the students sometimes are afraid to reach out. They're afraid to ask. And I always say, the worst somebody can say is no, right? I don't have time. I'm sorry. No. So let's talk about mentorship, and this vision that you want to see HKN evolve into. Tell us what you want to see, and we're going to make it happen. So let's talk about the mentorship.
I would like to see that that when you're inducted into IEEE-HKN, that basically you now have a set of resources, contacts, and structure that will serve you for the rest of your life. I'd like that to be, frankly, the opportunity to, meet and have your own group, but also be able to reach out to the mentor network within that group to, be able to shop ideas, to, be able to say, hey, look, here's my business plan. Do you know Do you know someone that can finance this? Where am I going wrong with this idea? Even down to, I'm building the circuit and it's just not working. I mean, frankly, I believe that our newest members probably just don't realize how interested the rest of us are in helping them and seeing them successful. Because I hate to say it, but we're beginning to age out. We want to see them take our place and to step up and to, frankly, like we talked about earlier with the AI, the world is on the cusp of amazing sets of changes. And we know that these are the people that can make all the changes. And frankly, it's an opportunity for some of the old guard to be part of the future.
Yes.
Because they're going to carry the future forward.
And keep us connected. I think that, that's something a lot of times people say, what are you most proud of? And I'm like, well, it's the students. To watch a student that you've, touched their lives in some way. For me, as a student back in the 80s, I got to meet, Jim Watson, who we have an IEEE Student Professional Awareness Award named after. And he came to my institution on a weekend. It was a rainy, miserable weekend, and a group of us and IEEE, students and HKN showed up, and he was so empowering. And I took that with me, saying, this one person who hardly knows me personally said, I know you're going to make it, and I know that you're going to do well. And he could have been lying, but I believed him. And that you just need one person to believe in you to change lives. And I think that that's our reward. So what you're saying is that students should not be afraid to look for someone to help them with this. And again, to reach out, to connect. And if you're not sure, all of us at HKN are here to help build that network. I believe that we will try to build this infrastructure. We have the Student Leadership Conference right now, which has brought these students together, and it's really tremendously funded. So we want to build alumni, but giving back and creating these mentors, Patrick, I'm going to commit of all HKN right now to you that I'm going to make this happen because I'm so motivated. And no, really, I will. So, in a few months, you can come back and say, she promised, where is it? And we'll be able to deliver.
Like I said, there are a bunch of us that'll work right with you on it. So we'll make it happen.
That's awesome. So thank you for that. Now I have to ask, what do you do when you're not toying with AI? What's like the other part of you that's, what else are you doing when you're not, building, designing? I'm sure you're building, designing somewhere else, but what is it that's not electronic or not AI? Let's talk about that.
Non-electronic. Well, I love teaching, and we had mentioned earlier that I had kids. I have 5 kids, and now I've got a ton of grandkids. So, pretty much I'm nurturing them. They're always into something. I think every one of them is going to be an engineer.
Yay. Can you talk about the one that you said that was doing some sort of experimentation that you had to interview on?
Yeah, no, I was on a call once, and one of my kids went by and said, hey, do we have any iron oxide? And I said, yeah, there's some out in the lab. And came back a few minutes later saying, do we have any powdered aluminum? And I was like, no, you got to get on eBay for that. And I'm still doing my Zoom thing and the rest. I got off the Zoom and started thinking about it, saying, hey, that's thermite. Went out and found, anyway, nothing went bad. But you got to watch it when you've got.
I'd be like, great, my kid's learning chemistry and materials, doing something productive.
You've got to watch out when you've got creative kids in a fully stocked lab. Anything can happen.
That's wonderful. And what else do you think about when you think about the blending of science? Like you mentioned physics in the beginning, the other STEM fields. It's not just all about the engineering. I mean, you have to bring other fields into it. And I think today, not just the science, technology, engineering, math, but you talked a lot about the arts, bringing the arts into it. And, and I hope that in the future? Do you, and I hope maybe you'd share that vision too. Do you see engineering curriculums changing to include more of that creative arts piece to it?
Well, I think we have to include it only because the engineering and the sim set of disciplines is only as good as it impacts humanity. And
Mm-hmm.
humanity basically still gravitates back to elements of the arts.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not saying that we've got to all run out and become painters or anything crazy, but we've got to recognize that, you know, aesthetics and usability and interface and how it looks, how it appears, how we deal with technology is critical. And that's not something that you're going to mathematically calculate. That is part of this artistic, element of how people actually interact in their day to day. What is aesthetic? What is,
Mm-hmm.
valuable to them? And so even though something performs very well technically, it still basically doesn't resonate with people because it doesn't fit their needs, and their needs
Or
are,
they're intimidated by it. Or they,
or
or
they're
they.
intimidated by it, or it's not intuitive. If
Mm-hmm.
we haven't understood enough about people and how people act and interact with things, then we've failed to build a product that is actually useful.
Right.
So
That's so important.
yeah, it's not just technology. It's all about that human interface to it. And
And
I think that's going to be even more and more as we go forward, because now we've gotten to the point where we can build great stuff,
mm-hmm.
but we've got to realize that what we're building now is so technically complex
Mm-hmm.
that we can't just take for granted that everyone understands what we built to our level. It's got to be something that, well, let's put it this way: an iPad, a 5 or 6 year old can pick up an iPad and knows exactly how to do it. And that didn't happen by accident.
Mm-hmm.
That is, a lot of not just engineering, but a lot of the arts that
Mm-hmm.
went into it. I have a feeling that, very soon, things like our cars and many other things will require far more than just, a pack of sensors and a great big old supercomputer to drive them. It's going to come down to that ability to interact and to comfort people and to provide them, a user experience that is more than just the raw technology. And that's where the arts are going to come in.
Mm-hmm. And it's so interesting because here at IEEE, we have a humanitarian activities committee, and we have a special interest group on humanitarian technologies, where students, and a lot of our HKN students, are doing these humanitarian projects. And the first thing that they're learning is, I might have this great idea, but for instance, water resources, purifying water in some of these countries that have poor water quality. And if they don't come up using local materials, not intimidating designs, understand the culture and buy-in of the population, they end up being like, storage units for fruit, not actually for the intended purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So that is critical. And I think you're absolutely right. I don't think that you're just going to get that by having wonderful technology. You really have to understand the culture and all these other things.
Another critical aspect too is I think engineers really need to focus on being able to communicate, because in the end, I've met a lot of fellows who basically say, look, my technology is great. I've got a great design. Here it is. It's on a cocktail napkin. Figure, if you're not smart enough to, figure it out on your own. And I always challenge them and say, look, unless you're going out to the factory and building it, the only thing that you produce, the value of all your great insight, is whatever you can put on a piece of paper and someone else can understand. And if you can't make yourself understood, I don't care how much great, math you've done. It doesn't matter, because in the end, it can't be used by people. If you can't communicate what your idea is in the entrepreneurial environment, if you can't, explain the technology, the vision, the structure, those are critical things. And I don't think people put enough attention on them. And again, it's not just about writing, it's about being able to be understood.
by anybody or to the audience you need. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because another stigma that you're breaking here, Patrick, is that people say, well, I don't like to write, so therefore I should become an engineer. I don't like to communicate, therefore I should become an engineer. And especially if you want to be able to change the world and get people to buy into your ideas and entrepreneurship, you've got to be able to communicate. And that's something that I've noticed personally with HKN students, is when they come to our sessions and they, when they come in versus when they graduate, you're like, oh my gosh, this transformation is absolutely beautiful. To watch them grow and flourish to be wonderful communicators, and being able to do that with mentors that they can, bounce ideas off or have better ways, and having them ask questions about, well, what do you mean by that? Well, that's nice to show me the equation, but how's that how are you going to communicate that? So thank you for bringing that up. My gosh, we've covered a lot of territory today. A worldwide tour of everything from AI to the arts and humanity. So at this time, if anybody has any questions from our audience, we'd be happy to entertain them. There should be an onslaught of you out there that are saying, I want him to mentor me, because I'm going to be like the first one in line saying, it's not just for young ones. Some of us older ones look at this and are super excited about it as well. So Patrick, while we're waiting for some questions or any, what final advice would you give to students?
Embrace embrace your skills. Recognize who you are and what you've got, the opportunity that IEEE-HKN puts in front of you, but also the idea that you are in a position to change the world. It's going to take grit. It's going to take effort, and you'll end up in places that you would have never imagined today. Don't necessarily think you're going to chart your course for 40 years ahead. You're going to have to roll with the punches as they come, but you're going to find amazing things, and you're going to do amazing things. Just be open to it. Be creative. Fill the needs as you see them, and don't be shy about it. Be bold, because in the end, that's what we need. That's what you need as individuals, just to realize that you can do it, and we're all here to help.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So on behalf of all of us at HKN, I want to thank Patrick Nunally today for joining us. But I also want to commit, I'm going to commit to that HKN Mentor Circles. We're going to kick this off as one of our new initiatives. And we hope all of you out there participate and help us shape it, form it. And we all want to thank Patrick for joining us, for being that inspiration and putting us to the challenge. So again, thank you so much, Patrick. I had a fabulous time. I hope you did. And now I see Nancy is back. Nancy, any closing words for us?
Well, I've had the opportunity to talk to Patrick on several occasions. So I've been always probably just totally inspired by his story, his recommendations, how really how humble he is for all that he has developed and created. I mean, this is not a man who talks about himself very much, but again, a lot of
I made him. I made him do it.
We have today are because of your work, Patrick. So certainly that, and and Karen, you're always amazing. What I do want to say is that we did pilot an alumni graduate student mentoring project last year. We're going to expand it this year. And so we do have a big alumni project going on. So we'll talk to you about that, Patrick, some more. And those of you that might be out there that might be interested in it, please get in touch with us as well, because we do think that in IEEE-HKN, one of our best untapped resources is our mentors, is our alumni. And we do want to find a way to get them more actively engaged. And I have never met an IEEE-HKN member, especially one that just graduated from school, that has not been interested in helping others or a student. So I've yet to meet one. So I agree with you. Most people that have, that join IEEE-HKN understand the give back or pay forward or whatever you want to call it. So it is wonderful. But you are a very humble man, Patrick, in terms of what you've accomplished. I think you mentioned the number of patents. I happen to know, folks, that behind his desk there is an Emmy, which is kind of an unusual award for an engineer to have. But I do like to pride out what a rock star Patrick is.
Well, I've been very fortunate, and I've surrounded myself with great people.
Mm-hmm. Terrific. Well, if you want to ask more questions, you can always get in touch with EdICAPNU at info@hkn.org. Please go over and visit our website at www.hkn.org. I'm always available to help you, Nancy Ostin, as the director of EdICAPNU, and I can also connect you if you're an alumni or others, how you'd like to be involved and engaged with EdICAPNU. But thank you. Mm-hmm.
No, I was going to say thank you both for this today. This was a great honor. I really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I feel that very strongly about you, Patrick, from the first time we got a chance to talk, and every single time since. You inspire me and really make me really appreciate what I get to do every day as the director of EdICAPNU, and who I get to work with, and the students that we get to help along the way. So thank you very much, Karen. Again, thank you, Patrick. It's been wonderful. Up next at Pathways, if you're joining us live, is a session on the IEEE Communications Society is going to be one of our great societies, and they're doing a fireside chat with leaders from Nokia, Bell Labs, and IS Wireless. So that should also be really great too.
That's interesting because we talked about how important.
Yeah. So if you're interested, we're going to continue this conversation over there. And thank you so much. And we'll see you around EdICAPNU.
Okay. Bye-bye.